Hello, everybody. Daniel Johnson from Venza here from our Dutch office for this webinar. Thank you so much for taking time to learn a little bit about local backup with cloud replication. We have a special guest as our presenter today. We're very excited to have David Neel, CIO of CyberTek Engineering, is here to be our presenter, and so we're going to hear from David in a few moments. So glad to have you there, sir, calling in from Indiana. We've got a couple of industry experts on the call today. For those of you that have tuned into our InfoSec invitational competition, these gentlemen were members of the elite competitors, and we're pleased to have them here and represent the industry and be a sounding board for what's being presented, make sure that what is being shared is relevant and resonates with the real life activities of hospitality industry, which is the focus for all things we do here at Venza. So let's find out who our industry experts are and hear a little bit from them, and then we'll let David do his spiel. So why don't we start with you, Dimitris, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself. You may be on mute, pal. Are you? There we go.
Okay. So hi, my name is Dimitris Georgoulis. I'm IT manager for Le Bristol Hotel in Paris. Basically, I'm working here for the past 4 years. Le Bristol is like a member of the Oetker collection group. It's a group of 11 hotels. And I'm working as an IT manager for the past 10 years in another 2 hotels in total. And I'm working in the hospitality IT in general for 19 years now.
Fantastic. Started when he was 3, people. He was very advanced young man. Beautiful property there at Le Bristol. I have been able to at least be in the lobby. Lovely spot there in Paris. So glad to have you, Dimitris. Thank you for being here. Jared, do you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. Yeah, Jared Boulden from Marcus Hotels and Resorts. We're based out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I've been with the organization for going on 13 years now in a variety of different roles. I'm happy to be here today.
Fantastic. Good to have you calling in from eastern Wisconsin, right there, just outside of Milwaukee, right?
You got it.
Yeah, lovely stuff. All right, so why don't we hear from David? David, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, giving us a little kind of a rundown of your career, and then launch right into the presentation.
All right, thank you for that, Daniel. My name is David Neel. I am an older guy in the IT world. Got my start in 1982 as my first IT job and have played that role for hundreds of different companies as a consultant and or technician, whatever you may say, for different places, people, and things. And with that, that exposes me to a lot of good, bad, and indifferent. With that, it is a scary thing with backups nonetheless. Everybody can say this last year has been different than any year before. Having over 30 years in, this year was different. And if we were to ask managers or owners of the corporation at the C level, hey, how do you feel about taking and letting everybody go home with all of our data? What do you think about that? Most of them 2 years ago would have been scared to death of that opportunity, and now that seems to be the norm. So that's where I thought this presentation about backups would be something good for everyone to see.
Fantastic.
So you want me to get started jump right in and give some questions and things for people to think about?
Yeah.
So here is the big thing that I see as a consultant whenever we walk in and look at a new company. The software that has been used in the past is a lot of people just click on, oh, I'm going to back up the C, I'm going to back up the D, I'm going to send it into Azure, the cloud, somewhere else in the world. And then I've got a full backup of C. In the old days, we used to just back up directories because it was expensive. But now we've gone to imaging backup, and everybody is throwing that sucker out into the world. Somewhere else, it's encrypted. It is on some storage vault that's passed all the compliance. But here is the issue that we're seeing. On working with a company not long ago, they had 4.5 terabytes in a single image online, and they needed to do a restore of the image. 36 hours of speed if they have a 1,000 speed internet connection. If they don't, we are talking days to restore files. So the scenario that we have is we can get into some cool things about RTOs and RPOs and a lot of different terminology, which I'll get into in a minute. But people have to think that, oh, just because bad things happen, restoring a file is not an instantaneous process for recovery. And a lot of people don't deal with that well. So here's the first thing I would ask. Is all of your data, do you have data online and available for the last year? Do you have a year's worth of backups? That can be picked up by compliance. Do you know what you're, by law, what you have to carry? In a lot of our governments, that is perpetuity. We have to keep data forever. We can never release. We always have to keep track of every revision that's made on a daily basis. That is massive. And we can get into that. I'm not sure, Daniel, you may know what is the retention plan of most of the GDPR in Europe. Do they have specifications by law that you are to hold data for a specific amount of time?
There is, from what I understand, there is not a specific period of time. It's very general with regards to the amount of just indicating what is kind of best practice. Dimitris, are you aware if there's a specific data retention mandate within GDPR? I don't believe so. Putting you on the spot.
We're talking about guest data right at the moment, right?
Just the general data protection regulation. I don't think they reference how long the data. It's just you need to be able to document and have a discernible reason why. Yeah.
Yes, not sure, but I've seen around some kind of 90 days policy or 60 days policy for some kind of information, like credit card information, and it shouldn't be stored for more than specific time. And for example, I'm not just talking about electronic information, but if you have like a paper data, like for credit card information on a paper, and you have it on a closet which is stored and locked and it has all the requirements, then you have to make sure that after a certain amount of days, which is either 90 or 60, not pretty sure, you have to make sure that you
have a purge
destroy it.
Okay.
So, go ahead.
Not really sure.
One of the things that we are seeing and dealing with some of the other businesses that are not necessarily North American based or in our area is the one thing we are seeing is a lot of people have used backup programs that just do one thing. They make one backup every night and then they replicate it, maybe local hybrid to the cloud or whatever, but they're making a single backup every night of their data, which is great, and it's better than those that don't have it. And the worst thing is asking a customer, where's your backups? And they're not real sure. That is a scary thing, and it happens more than we know. My second question is, do you know where your most valuable data is and how is it protected? This is the thing that I think most people are missing. They are looking at backups as a single entity. Checkbox, yes, we have backup software installed, and it is going either local or going to the cloud. And it's a checkbox and it's done. The value of the most prized data in your company should have its own backup rules set. So what we are asking most of our customers to do is that there is a backup for SQL. There is a backup for their set data that they are most valued because when the bad things happen, as an example, we had a fire with a customer 1st of January. They don't care when the clerk's data is restored. Their first thing is, where's my accounting data? I have to run payroll this weekend. Well, from the outside consultant that we were brought in, you know, to look at this, I'm like, well, where is that data? On the server? And I'm like, okay, you have 12 servers. Which server is it? Yeah. It's on one of them. And I'm like, are we restoring SQL? Are we restoring, you know, QuickBooks? What are we restoring? And so the most valuable data that you have needs to be documented, and don't document it on the servers. Put it in a different cloud source somewhere else that you know your data map. Where is the data? How is the data accessed? Which version of SQL, if you're going to have to do a code steal restore, or are you going to do an image backup? Do you know what's actually out there in your software inventory? You need to know these things. And so one of the things I ask everybody on this to do is get yourself something to drink and a legal piece of paper and say, all right, if my building was to go away today, what's the first thing and the most critical data, and where is it? And do I have a plan to get that data back from a backup image or flat file? If you are using an image, great. It's going to take you a long time to restore that data. Second thing is, if you're doing flat file, then you're going to have to figure out what applications were running that flat file. What was the name of the share that was on? If you don't have this information documented prior to a failure, you are in a big world of hurt. It will take more time, and you're going to miss out on your RPOs and your RTOs. Your RTO is going to be pretty much established. And let me throw those two words out, not to just be a geek and everything has to be an acronym. But the things to remember is there is what is called an RPO, which is your recovery point. That is, when was the last backup performed? It was performed at midnight. Did it finish at 2 a.m.? Did it finish at 10? What was that point? That's what you can back up to. Then if you have to recover, and here's where we find people that have problems, is the backup ran and it finished at 2 a.m., let's say on March 3rd. At the end of business today at 4 p.m., the server crashes. Well, I have a point that I can recover you back to at 2 a.m. in the morning, but we will have lost all the transactions throughout the day because I wouldn't be performing another backup. Is that acceptable to the company? And if it's not, then you need to perform another incremental, let's say at noon, because then your failback point is at noon. In the hospital worlds, they have about a 30-minute to 1 hour RPO. They can roll back 1 hour and restore. So if they take a ransom hit, which is pretty big in the hospital medical world, they can roll back to 1 hour back and then bring that up. Now, if we talk about RPOs, the next and the scariest thing is the RTO. The RTO is how much time is it going to take you to restore that data. We see people that will have an RPO of 2 o'clock last night, but it's going to take them 3 days to restore. So now you've not only, I'm going to take you back to 2 o'clock that morning.
It's going to take me. It's going to take me until Friday to get it.
Exactly, and that is the scenario that I brought up earlier. We had a customer that had an image backup of 4.5 terabytes. In order to get that image back from their cloud provider into their actual network that we could control it was a 3-day restore. So my RPO, I knew when I could get them back to, but now their business is in hold for 3 days until I can get the data back to where I can do the restores. So you need to understand the value of your data. You need to understand the RPO. But what people are not taking into consideration is the RTO. How long is it going to take you to do this? And if you've not ever taken the dry run of a failure, that is a surprise, because management's going, well, we have backups. And we're like, yeah, we have backups. They're in the cloud. That's great because the building burned down, but it's going to take me 3 days to get that accounting data back so you can do payroll. That's where most people fail.
let's bring in Dimitris and Jared just to see how this is resonating. Don't want to put you guys necessarily on the spot to find out what your actual policies are, what the situation is at your organizations, but I'm curious to find out, because two very key things that I'm hearing from David. One is that data mapping, that inventory, identifying where your valued data are, and understanding how to bring them back, and then the other being these recovery times and how far back, RPO, right?
RPO and RTO.
Yep. So are those, you guys don't have to divulge the internal secrets, but are these conversations that you're having within the organization? Are these conversations that you know that other industry professionals, other hotel groups, are they wrestling with doing a data inventory? Are they also looking at recovery times and RPOs?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the data mapping is critical for a variety of reasons. And, you know, in the context of today's conversation, backups, it's absolutely imperative that you know where your data is and how it's protected, so you can ensure that you're getting good backups of that data if it's that important to you. But going back to a point that David mentioned is, doing DR testing is, a critical aspect of this. Just to say that you're doing backups, isn't enough. You actually need to validate that the work that you're putting in is valid, and that you can actually successfully restore any one of your backups that you have in place. And to his point, understand the amount of time that it may take to restore that data, especially as our data sets, just continually grow on a daily basis.
Yeah. Dimitris, agreement, disagreement, thoughts?
Well, I do agree with Jared. What I can say with my experience is that most of the situations that I needed to restore from backup was just files from the file server. Usually someone just needs like a file that was modified a few weeks ago and they want an older one. But there was a couple of times that I need to restore a whole virtual machine. And apparently Vim, just to give you an experience, has a very nice feature which is called instant recovery, which basically restores the whole virtual machine like within seconds, but the storage remains on the backup server. So if you are in a hurry and you want to give back the system immediately, you just use this option, and this can give you back the VM instantly. And while the storage remains on the backup server, and it copies within some time, depending on the size, of course. Now, this might take a few hours, but the users can still continue to work within a few seconds, maybe with a slower speed, but still it's operational. Now, I don't have personally any experience with cloud storage on my backup to give you a feedback on that, but I would use a cloud replication as a second backup, not like as my core backup. I would have my core backup locally, and then I would have like maybe a cloud replication for a second backup, just to make sure that if something goes wrong locally, I would still have something to wait for.
Okay.
What a great lead into the next subject.
Okay, jump in. Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So in the world of backups, there is the rule called the 3-2-1. Now, if you go above 3-2-1, that's great, but the minimal expected rule in backups is, do you have the accessibility to get to 3 backups? Because we may have a file corruption, maybe the backup didn't finish, but chances are you should have 3 backups. That could have been Monday, Sunday, Saturday, that could be weeklies, whatever you have. You have the opportunity to not depend on a single backup, but you must have 3 backups available to you. Chances are that file wasn't held open by a user on a spreadsheet or those kind of things. 3 backups. The number 2 is they must be on 2 different types of media. Do not depend on a USB for 2 different types of backups. What this is usually commonly referred to is one is local and one is cloud. One could be on tape, one could be on USB. You're using 2 separate media styles to store your backup. And the last one, the number 1, is one of those should be cloud-based. Now, I've had people in different industries that say, well, we have a redundant site, we're going to roll it over to the second site, and it's not going to be on site with us. That number 1 is making sure that you don't have all your eggs in a single basket. Do you only have one way, like, oh yeah, we're going to do 2 different backups. One's in tape and one is on an external NAS. Well, what happens if the building burns? It's got your tape and it's got your, unless you're running your tapes off-site to some third-party vault. So the big rule there is 3-2-1. Do I have at least 3 different copies of a backup? And that doesn't have to be the same day, but I have 3 days to fall back to. Do I use 2 different styles of media? I'm not solely dependent upon a Buffalo NAS, and I'm not solely dependent on tape. I'm not solely dependent on Azure. I'm not solely dependent upon AWS or any one of the cloud vendors. And do I have at least one of those that is off-site to me? And that one off-site needs to be non-mapped. That is one thing that in the ransom cases that we've been called in to work on, the saddest thing in the world is, yes, I have a backup. It's directly connected to a USB drive, connected to my server. The server got hit, my backup got hit, and I didn't have anything offsite or disconnected from the network. And so what do you do? The rule 3-2-1 is something you need to apply.
So that last one really is focusing on the physical space and how vulnerable having everything in that one basket. Are you see that's happening a lot? I mean, we hear about the, you know, obviously the cyber attacks, but are people not necessarily thinking about the risks around, you mentioned having a fire or something like that, some of the physical,
right.
Do people underestimate that? Are you seeing?
Absolutely. They're going through a checkbox with management that says, yes, we have backups. Well, the next question is, okay, where are they? You know, are they attached to do, if I am a hacker, am I good enough to be able to get into your Buffalo box and destroy your backups? Yes. Those are the things that needs to be separated. It does not need to be directly attached full-time user IDs and passwords. One of the things we are starting to go against is some of the vendors that provide backup services. It is a icon on the desktop. You click on it, there's your backups. It's like, where's the 2-factor? Where's something to be able to look at the backup set so that the hacker doesn't whack your backups, then encrypt your server and go, now you don't have anything to fall back to. That's why it needs to be separate from your existing connectivity or your LAN environment. Putting it in the cloud, there would be a cloud authentication process. And that's where the question, or my item number 4, is it backed up locally? Is it backed up to the cloud, or are you running hybrids? The biggest thing that we are seeing now in the backup world is what's called hybrids. You are backing up local, you're backing up to the cloud. Backing up to the cloud is usually a bit-by-bit differential, and the locals are your speed backups. You do most of your big restores there, but should you have a fire, the locals are gone, and now you know you're going to have to pull everything from the cloud. If you do have to have a recovery, local is better because you're not pulling it through your WAN interface. It's about speed, but hybrid is great because if you are involved in a ransom attack, your backups in the cloud should be safe. So local, the questions 3-2-1, local, cloud, or hybrid. Hybrid is your best plan.
Shooting from the hip, Dimitris and Jared, what do you guys think the industry standards in terms of the industry? Do you think this do you think the industry is 75% of the hotel groups are approaching things with a hybrid, or is it 25%? Or I mean, just from what you experience, what do you think?
I would say probably the brands and chains that have larger dedicated teams and more sophisticated infrastructure likely have a leg up here. But if we're thinking about some of the smaller brands and boutique shops out there, I wouldn't be surprised to see that they may not be following industry best practices here, and hopefully don't learn the hard way.
Right. Dimitris, what do you think?
Totally agree. I think that big brands, they're having like a standard operating procedures. They have guidelines, and they force their local IT teams to follow specific rules. So I think that they are most likely that they are following these best practices. But if there's like a local hotel IT without any brand on top, it's up to the local IT. I'm not saying that this guy doesn't follow the best practices, but it's most likely that he doesn't. So I guess that this is how it is. And to my opinion, like the hospitality IT is not like so advanced like in any
fintech
other yeah, exactly, any other industry. So it's not like we are not like on the top notch technology industry. So
room to grow. We've got room to improve.
Yeah,
always
sure.
opportunity.
For sure.
Very great. So just being mindful of the time, David, we've got 2 more minutes on the clock. We certainly stay longer, but I want to be respectful of Dimitris and Jared's time. You've got the last number 5 to get to, right?
Right. So the question that I posed back in the beginning is, are you doing it correctly? And that needs to be every IT guy, like I said, get you a comfortable drink, get you a piece of paper, and go through the desktop exercise and say, I just got the call, the building burnt to the ground. Do you even know where to start? Do you know the passwords to get into your cloud storage to be able to bring it back? If the server went down and it took all the data with it, do you have that information? So the question is, are you doing it correctly? Is going to be an individual. It's going to be the IT guy or whoever that service is. They have to ask that question, because the worst feeling in the world as a consultant is to get that call at 2 a.m. Hey, our building just burnt to the ground. I've got 100 people coming in at 8 o'clock in the morning, and what do I do? Where's my data? How long is it going to take to get this back up? Those kind of things are things that everyone needs to ask in the IT industry. If you're a department manager, you need to be asking the questions. How long would it take for us to come back in a disaster? And just because you have the word backups doesn't mean that you're recovering back as fast as you think you are going to. So that's my question for everybody to take home is, you need to think about the backups before you need them.
So that's the second time you brought up like chat down things with a beverage. Do you have a beverage that you would suggest for?
Well, I'm a bourbon guy. I happen to be in Louisville. The bourbon flows freely here.
Okay.
The game of choice.
So bourbon as first choice, but also think locally, since that's where you're at, right?
Support local.
So yeah, Dimitris, there in Paris, you might you could easily find some French wine, I'm sure, to
Exactly.
There'll be cheese for Jared up north.
Well, he's got all sorts of good beer. There's a lot of good beer up there in Wisconsin. Well,
so is there any questions?
Yeah, any questions?
Not on my side.
Nothing over here.
Yeah, and I'm curious, guys. Did you hear anything that you were like, I haven't thought of that, or that's maybe something especially good for for our other IT managers throughout the hospitality industry that are attending? Anything that you might say, yeah, that what David had shared is good advice? Anything in particular that stood out as like the mnemonic 3-2-1? I hadn't heard that before.
Yeah, just you really got to take a look at your backups and give it get the right folks involved and give it some thought and make sure that you have the right processes in place, because the worst time to find out that your backups aren't working properly or you weren't backing up the proper data sets is in the time that you need it in a disaster. So that's going to be a pretty uncomfortable situation. So spend the time up front to figure out what you actually need.
Okay.
Manuel, I have a few attendee questions.
Okay, thank you, Sean. The voice from beyond, Sean Shields.
All right, this comes from Marco Correa. Many companies are moving to the cloud. Their infrastructures and platforms, PaaS, PaaS, and LaaS, I guess. In this scenario's backup strategy is based on SLAs and tactics like geo-replication for mission-critical systems. How do you tackle this change? Are you 100% dependent of the cloud vendors, or do you spend an extra amount to ensure high availability for your critical systems? So,
David, do you want to tackle that one? Or?
I will take that. So I go back to number 2. What is your most valuable data and how are you protecting it? If the critical data comes back, and I don't want to turn this into a math exercise, but if you're looking at data that you are a business and you're making $1 million a day, what is your downtime cost? Going to the cloud may be a way to save you money in your backups, but if it's going to take you, going back to the RTO and RPO, you want to look at when was the last time and how long is it going to take? That's where the hybrid is coming in. Most all of those servers will allow you to encrypt a local image of the backup for 7 days on-prem. So in that, just because it's going to the cloud, that may be your default. Our scenario is we have long-term storage in the cloud. We replicate 7 days worth on-site encrypted, so that if we do need to do a restore, we have that physical device local and we're not going to depend on our RTO to bring that through. Let's say somebody has a 20 meg internet connection.
okay.
That has highly affected my time for recovery. Even though it's there, I'm limited to that. So even though you are getting a PSSA or you're getting some online solution, look for the opportunity for a hybrid. Most all of them have it. It may cost you a couple of dollars more. And in the solutions that we have, the primary backup goes to the local device and it's replicated from the local to the cloud in off hours. So we speed burn everything on a backup and then we replicate slowly throughout the day to the cloud. That way we do recover quickly and we have long-term storage in the cloud.
Okay, I think you kind of touched on this, but Andrew Mendoza says hi, and he says, should encrypting backups be a standard?
Yes.
We get a
Short and
definitely
sweet.
a strong, very, very clear nod also from Jared there as well. Dimitris, do you think encryption of backups
Definitely,
is it
yeah.
standard? Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay. All right. Unanimous agreement on that one.
Don't
Any
lose
other
the
questions?
Don't store the key on the actual data somewhere that is actually trying to be recovered.
I'll bet you've seen that. I'll bet you have seen that, right, David?
I have one that the only place that was in the prior IT guy's email, he stored it in an email, but the problem was we were trying to restore the exchange.
Well, one of our good friends, Jim Stark, an expert himself, says make sure to coordinate with your hospitality software vendor. You are backing up the right file structures to help them restore the system. So
Going
always
back to
work
number
with your
2,
vendor.
what's the most
Yep.
valuable data and do you know that it's protected?
David, I appreciate you taking time to present, talk on this subject. We're so grateful for the relationship we have with you and your team at Venza. So glad you could make it, and It's still early for you, so no dipping into that bourbon just yet. But it is time for Dimitris and I to say goodnight, and it's time for maybe an adult beverage for the both of us. You there, just a couple of countries away. Jared, thank you as well for joining, and everybody for coming in and watching this webinar. We hope it was helpful and informative, and well worth your time. Sean, thanks for running the show from the control booth there.
No problem. We'd like to thank everybody for coming out, and this will end our broadcast. Please stay tuned, as we will be having more webinars here with Venza. Thanks so much, and everybody have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Thank you, guys.
Cheers.